Hey, what's going on, world? My name is Casey, and I'd like to start off by saying that this is my first video. So, welcome to my first video. This is going to be my introduction into speaking about cybersecurity topics, careers in cybersecurity, what it takes to exactly get into this field, certifications that you might want to pursue, network connections that you might want to consider, trying to find the best route and solution to get into this field. So I've started as a network administrator in IT going all the way back to 2014 and have built all the way up to 2023 a pretty, I would say, extensive amount of skill sets and particular abilities in cybersecurity specifically. Uh, just to kind of explain a little bit of myself, this is my first video, maybe a little bit introduction about myself. Is I work as a senior security engineer. With that, I have a bachelor's in cybersecurity, which I got in 2019. I started in cyber specifically around 2018, like 2017, 2018 timeframe. But like I said, I've been kind of doing IT in general in the networking realm, where there were cybersecurity or infosec. We usually say infosec, and kind of that's one of the terms you'll hear a lot is infosec. Um, all the way dating back to my career path, my start of my career path, which was really like 2013, 2014 time frame. So I started off with AT&T and catapulted into where I'm at now, which is a direct senior security engineer. So with that, I felt this was necessary to do because I have so many people, friends, family, even people I've met just randomly. I mean, I actually funny story real quick is I had a janitor at a hotel I was staying at in Fort Lauderdale because I live out here in Florida. It was 2 or 3 months ago, but I got to talking to him. I'm a pretty personal person. I speak a lot to people. I'm big into communication and trying to meet new people. But I even had a conversation with one of the janitors at the Hyatt I was staying in. Um, and we just kind of crossed paths. He had asked what I did for work, and I tried to help him out. And it turned out that he was in school for cybersecurity, and when he found out that I work in the field, it was just something really special for him. And I've taught cybersecurity with boot camps and different things like that, but I've never really made my own video. I've never really pursued any type of video specifically on the topic. I've always just shared my knowledge with others on a personal level, which nothing wrong with that. I'll always do that. I always love to help out, but I really wanted to start making videos and talking about some keen topics. So with that, I do have some notes in front of me, but I want to talk about cybersecurity. Let me give you the definition of what I found online. And then what I'd like to do is kind of segue into a little bit of what I think about cybersecurity. And then I'd like to get into a topic of different threat actors or hackers. Now, just to clarify, when I say threat actors, it's me just saying hackers. We're just talking about a particular entity of a person or a particular entity of a actual threat. That's the idea is threat actor being it could either be a person, a software, a particular malware, virus. But usually when you hear the word or term threat actor, it's usually talking about a particular person that's trying to get into a system, find a vulnerability, what have you. But the caveat is that not every actor is malicious. Not every actor is trying to do something illegal. And that's some of the things that I think people get a little tripped on. It's one of the big talking points I talk about whenever I try to kind of segue into this field. So, let's just kind of get into it. Now, the definition I have here is what is cybersecurity in simple words? I found this on Google. So, what it says is cybersecurity is the practice of protecting systems, networks, and programs from digital attacks. Then it expands. These cyber attacks are usually aimed at accessing, changing, or destroying sensitive information, extorting money or user via ransomware, or interrupting normal business processes. The reason I wanted to give this definition is because a lot of people start here. They go into a Google search, they try to figure out what is cybersecurity, and you get these, snippets, I guess you can call them, where it's giving like a tabloid definition. Now, this is accurate, but if you were to ask somebody on the street or somebody that works in the field, they can give you many, many different answers. Cybersecurity has been going back all the way back to 80s, 90s time frame. I work with people who have worked through Y2K and different things like that and have been in this field for 25, 30 plus years. They would probably give you a completely different answer based on the lay of the land or the particular things they're working on back in the day. People working in the DOS environment or working with a particular version of Microsoft, Microsoft Vista or different Microsoft, or I say Microsoft, I meant to say Windows Vista or Windows 7 or whatever type of operating system they're working on. There's a lot of people who work specifically on Linux. There's a lot of people who work specifically on Macs, and usually the world of operating system and things that particular engineer or that security profession or professional works in is going to make up the idea of what they would think cybersecurity is to them. So cybersecurity to me, being in the engineering space, is always firsthand is protecting the CIA triad. The CIA triad is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I can get into that in a later video, which I do plan on doing because it's very vital to understand these key concepts and foundational concepts for anything that you're learning in this field. But just so you know, the confidentiality is understanding how do we obfuscate and how we actually protect the data and the means of doing so, which gets into a lot of different things. Integrity is all about hashing and looking, and it's words you will hear, but I will also explain in later videos, but ways of basically saying, hey, these files, this data, everything that's on our system, does it have integrity? Is there a way to actually ensure that this file doesn't have anything wrong with it specifically? Has it been manipulated in any reason? What is the integrity violations or non-violations of that particular file, which is going to give us a better idea if it's been hacked into or if anybody's actually messed around with files. So be careful what you download, especially when you're updating. A big thing about file integrity is you'll hear about updates, and you'll hear about, like, for instance, Slack will have an update, or let's say you're updating some of the things that we updated. We can update stuff out of our company portal. Maybe we're updating Defender Agent, or updating to the new iOS version, which could be an Apple update. So, we know there's a lot of updates out there, a lot of different applications, but the one thing you want to ensure is that the integrity of the files that are included in those application updates match the files that were originally included in the actual deployment, the actual first download of that application. So something I'll talk about later. And then you have what's called availability. Availability is super simple. Just make sure the servers are up and running. I'm sure most of you have heard of ping attacks, or maybe, and I'm talking about people who may be already in this industry, or what do they call them? DOS attacks. So denial of service. So basically all that is somebody going in and trying to just shut down that service with ping floods, where they're just basically sending ping commands to the command prompt, where they're pinging what's called ICMP. And the reason I'm saying all these terms is because I want you guys to understand these are terms you're going to hear in the real world, especially as you pursue security in general. And if anything, I'll even put it out there. There might be people who aren't interested at all who will find this video later on and say, hey, I don't really want to get into cybersecurity. Well, I hate to break it to you, but if you're working at any job in any type of industry, you're probably going to be introduced at some point in your career to what's called security awareness training. And these are going to be terms you're going to hear in the training. So cybersecurity is something that's not going away anytime soon. It's definitely a hot topic right now to many people who want to get into the field. And at the end of the day, you just want to be familiar with these terms. If you work in IT, or if you're getting that security awareness training, or you're of course looking to get into this industry, it's only going to help you in the future to know what the language is and what we're talking about. So the topic I want to talk about today is hacker classification, different threat actors. Now, I will go ahead and call this out. As an instructor, I received these slides. I want to just give credit where credit is due. I didn't make these slides. I'm going to present 2 slides because these do really, really good at justifying what these hackers are. And I think it's worth mentioning that these particular hackers are accurate in today's real world, in today's ecosystem. So, of course, people can call different hackers, different threat actors a different thing. But this is usually your baseline of what the threats are. I like to always talk about what the threats are out there because you need to understand what exactly is the attack, and then I'll kind of give away something that I didn't catch in these particular slides that I think is the most important and the worst attack, or the biggest thing to consider in the attack vector, out there in the ecosystem. But just giving credit where credit is due, this came from a company called HackerU. I think they're called ThriveDX now, but I taught with them back in 2020, and haven't taught in a minute, but they did a big naming convention, like a big naming switch and branding in the company. And these were, I just want to credit these particular slides because they did come from them. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So hacker classifications. There's going to be, I believe, 5. Let me look. Oh, 6. Okay, so we have 6 different hackers specifically on this page. And then I'd like to kind of go through, man, this thing is all over the place. Here we go. And then I'd like to go into specifically what they are and kind of give a brief description. And of course, I want to throw it out there. If you have any comments or anything that you want to ask, feel free to put them in the comment section. I'll get to your comments. Also, you can email me at ingramcyber@gmail.com, ingramcyber@gmail.com. I'll post that in the link below, or in the comments below, so that way you have a way to reach out to me if you need to. But yeah, hacker classifications. So what are we talking about? Well, these are these are threat actors, where a lot of people think when they hear hacker, they automatically think bad, 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 right? We think about the movies, like Swordfish. What was Live Free? I think it was the 3rd or 4th movie, Live Free or Die Trying, the one with Bruce Willis, of course, the Christmas movie, right? Or Die Hard. I'm thinking of Die Hard, but there was a 3rd or 4th edition where it was all about hackers, and it was the one where the guy was in the semi truck, and I have to go back and watch it, but it was like they're hacking into the traffic lights, they're hacking into this, they're hacking into that, and it was kind of comical because the way they took it, that's Hollywood for you. The way they took that to a whole new level was just kind of funny. But there are other hackers out there that aren't interested or keen to doing those type of things. It's not to say that they couldn't do that. Of course, if there's vulnerabilities in any system, I always like to say anything connected to the internet is privy to being hacked. It's definitely an open target to being hacked. But it's about the person, the emotion, the psychology, the particular motive that the hacker has that makes up the actual the actual target use case of why they're actually hacking that system. So let's get into it. So we have what's called white hats. White hats are going to be your ethical hackers. Let me just call out what an ethical hacker is. Ethical hackers are those that are, in my opinion, trying to find bugs in systems. They're trying to find vulnerabilities in systems so that they can, as an expert, as it says here, use their abilities for ethical and legal purposes. So let's say Tesla, has some type of bug in their software for their vehicles, and it's a vulnerability that they may or may not be aware of, and they just go put out there in the open market. There's a website, I believe it's called Bug Hunter or something. I'd have to go and look up the website again, but there are actually what they call bug bounties. And what they do is these companies like Tesla, Microsoft, it's not always the Fortune 500s. There can be startup companies, whatever, but they'll put up basically jobs, if you will. It's like mini little tasks. They're not W-2 jobs, but they're tasked, and they're particular, like a little tiny task where it'll say, hey, we found this, we have this bug, or we may have this bug in our system, and we'd like you to help us find it. Or if you can find a bug in our system, show us where that bug is, or reach out to us, and we'll pay you some type of commission or compensation. And it's not a small compensation. Sometimes you can find a big bug, and it depends on what you find. They could pay you upwards to $10,000. I've spoke to people who work in that industry. That's all they do is bug bounties. Again, bug bounties is just finding issues with the software, but it's an ethical hacking approach where you have an agreement with that company to go and find their bugs, to figure out what exactly is wrong, vulnerabilities, and whatever comes out of those findings. Now, this is a skill. It is hacking, but it's ethically hacking to find out what's wrong with the system, to go and reach out to that person or that company and say, hey, this is what we found. And you usually, what you'll do is you'll reach back out to them and they'll give you some type of compensation. Or you just do it because, I don't know, maybe you just like the company. You have some type of binding to that company. Like, let's say you drive a Tesla car, or let's say you have that particular application on your system and you like that application, you don't want to see it get hacked. For instance, me personally, I use LastPass as my storage manager, which is basically just taking all your passwords and your usernames and storing them into one spot. Because if you're like me, I'm not the most organized person when it comes to that specific thing, because I have so many things I'm logging into, right? So I'm logging into many, many different applications, and I don't want to have to put them down on a notepad or anything like that, which is also a vulnerability, because if someone ever gets access to your direct directory or gets access to your C drive, which is where you're saving most of your stuff, if you don't have like an external drive, if someone gets access into your system, they'll have accessibility into your notepad, unless you somehow did some type of lock mechanism where you, again, going back to confidentiality, unless you somehow lock that notepad or put in some type of password to where you can't just open up the notepad. But a lot of people don't consider that. They don't lock down their passwords or lock down the notepads and the documentation that they put the passwords on, like a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, whatever your specific is for the documentation you're using. But LastPass was a company I was using, and then they got hacked. And funny enough, at my company, we were considering LastPass for what's called MFA, multi-factor authentication, which is a service they offer. And if you're not familiar with that, multi-factor authentication is, imagine you're logging into Amazon, imagine you're logging into Facebook or whatever social platform, Twitter or Instagram, and they ask you for an extra step of security. So, for instance, you log in and then it says, hey, we sent a code to your phone. Please tell us what that code is. Well, what that does is, of course, if a hacker tries to get your credentials, like maybe they just ran some rainbow table attack or a birthday attack or some type of credential harvesting attack, well, what's going to happen is they're going to try to use that information. It's called password spraying. So what they'll do is they'll get your information through maybe some type of directory attack or dictionary attack, and that's them performing some type of recon to get your information. Now, once they get your information, your credentials, they'll try to use that in the log into your system. So if there's no MFA, multi-factor authentication, then unfortunately they're just going to get into the system, and then they're going to save the cookies and do whatever they want damage to your system. Now, if you have some type of MFA, it'll send that code to your phone, and it's a line of defense. We call it defense in depth, but it's a line of defense where, of course, they can't get into your system without them having the code. It makes it a lot more challenging. That's why we have things like social engineering and ways of people finding backdoors into a system, because brute forcing an attack on a system or on an application to log into things is already complicated enough. It's like architectural hacking. So why not try to find a backdoor? And of course, these are all things I'm very excited to talk about and I want to get into. But right now, getting back into this, so white hat hackers are ethical hackers trying to get into the system in an ethical way, right? So segueing into gray hats. They sometimes operate legally and sometimes illegally. So it's really as simple as that. Gray hats can be ethical hackers. Let's say, for instance, someone just got, fired from a company, and they have spite against the company. They have, a little bit of resentment for how they got fired. If it was an unfair termination and they feel like, hey, I did a lot for this company, they let me go. Now, this can happen a lot with contractors. Unfortunately, contractors, it has pros and cons, but unfortunately, you can just be let go as a contractor, and there's no repercussion on the company. Most of these positions, at least where I've worked, are remote, And the thing about remote work is, let's say if you work for Michigan, or I say Michigan because that's where my company's based out of, or let's say you work out of California, or if you work out of Idaho, I mean, whatever the particular state is, you have to abide by the law of the company that you're working for as it's bound or binded to that state. So anything in the particular realm of those states' legislature or their laws, their labor laws, you're bound to, you're binded to those laws. So I have to abide by Michigan laws, and it doesn't apply to me, even though I live in Florida as a remote worker. So all that's important because if you're a contractor, they can let you go for any reason. And the reason that's important and why I'm talking about it so much is I think that's really what creates a gray hat hacker. Sometimes, they can start off with good intentions. They'll say, hey, I have, 2, 3 years, 5 years, several years, whatever, in this company. And I helped out with what's called penetration testing, where maybe they helped out finding bugs not only out there in the ether. That's more of your ethical hackers, finding things out there in the ether, like whatever it is in the wild, wild west, and trying to make some type of commission or just trying to do their due diligence and let somebody know. Gray hat hackers can be, hey, I helped out this company with their bugs. I helped them out with their internal software. The developers, people who are actually writing software, for this company. I've heard some really crazy stories where it really is a lot of the times these internal resources, these internal users or employees that are getting fired from companies, or they felt like they were treated misappropriately, unfairly, whatever, and they'll go in and just say, hey, I'm going to hack the system. I have nothing left to lose. I have these backdoor ways to get into the system. And again, it's a personality, it's a mindset, it's an approach to hacking something in an illegal way because they feel they're justified based off the way they were terminated or whatever the particular situation is. But that is, in a nutshell, a gray hacker, a gray hat hacker, somebody who's just not happy about some particular thing, or maybe to segue into the black hats, which is the next thing. They are out specifically for personal gain. So there's no mix between white and black. It's where you get the idea of gray. There's no ethical aspect to it. There really is no sometimes aspect to it. It's just, I am out for personal gain, such as money or damage. They do operate completely illegally without any type of authorization. What does it mean to say without authorization? If you're asking that question, that means they have no consent from the company to hack their system in an ethical or legal way. Basically meaning that if they're getting in whichever way they can. These are the people in the movies. These are the people that are trying to hack systems. These are the people who will take your information and sell it on the black web or the dark web. And they will try to figure out whatever type of gain they can to make some type of financial contribution or some type of, financial growth. They're doing it for financial reasons a lot of the times, or they just, have spite against that particular person. Now, it's not to say that, a black hat hacker is just someone going out there and just, trying to have financial gain, come out of whatever is birthed out of their hacking abilities and whatever information they get. They might do that. They may go hack, like for instance, LastPass, that was performed by black hat hackers. They get out the information and then they go out and sell it on the dark web, and they're trying to make, financial, contributions, and I say contributions, but they're trying to make financial gain out of it, and then contribute that to whoever it is they're selling the information to. So they're trying to get financial gain out of that, and they're trying to figure out ways of growing their financial gain. They're trying to get rich, I guess, in a way, or make some type of money. But also black hat hackers can do it for personal spite. Maybe they have a manager that, again, let them go, or they don't have the best relationship with friends and family, and they say, hey, I don't like this particular person anymore. I'm just gonna try to hack them. I've heard horror stories where people will get hacked and come to find out, if they're able to find out who it usually is someone they know. A lot of times this can be Facebook. I had a friend who got hacked on Facebook, and what had happened was she had to go and make a new Facebook page. Now, in this particular story, we don't know who it was, but if it was somebody basically trying to sell Taylor Swift tickets, and they got into her account to do that. Now, why they did it with her account, I can't understand, but the idea was hack into her system, got into her Facebook, and then she was messaging everybody on her contact list in Facebook through Messenger trying to sell these tickets. Now, nobody was buying the tickets, but that's what they do. They try to make sure they go in there, and that's a social engineering attack where if they can pretend to be somebody else, catfish them rather, into doing certain things for financial gain, they will. That's a formality of black hat hacking. So these are people in the movies, people who are trying to get, trying to elicit you for illegal reasons and trying to get you get you with whatever means necessary to get your information. So here's some of the terms that you may have never heard of. So the three I just mentioned, the white hats, the gray hats, and the black hats, they may have been hackers that you're familiar with, because I know there's a lot of buzz right now about security and hacking and different things like that. So these may have been already hackers that you're familiar with. But some of the ones you're not familiar with might be this, state nation-sponsored hackers. So state nation-sponsored hackers are going to be the people that have a planned and executed form of attack through a nation state. Now, a nation state is just saying it's a state-sponsored entity, right? So Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, even the United States are sponsoring cyber criminals. They're sponsoring these people to go and find information about this particular this particular critical infrastructure, such as power plants, financial institutions, military targets, such as weapon systems, intelligent databases, political targets, election campaigns, Dominion, which was our system for voting when it came to the last 2020 election. So in some cases, hackers may not even have like any specific target in mind, but will explicitly just try to exploit vulnerabilities in order to gain access into sensitive data. Something you might want to look into, a little homework in this video specifically, is going to be Stuxnet. I would look into Stuxnet because that was a nation state type of threat attack on a nuclear plant in Iran, I believe. So the goal is to gather information or intelligence to cause disruptions. Sometimes these attacks might even lead to physical damage. But it's an interesting topic because you would think, why would anybody hire somebody to hack, like another country or try to get into some type of critical infrastructure like, financial institution or power plants? And why would someone like Russia, Iran, whoever, why would they use that person to do that? It's because they don't want it to fall back on them. So nation state is just saying a state sponsored that hacker, whether ethically or unethically, to get into that system. Well, they're going to do it. That's something that the nation has agreed upon with that person. Guys, it is the morning time, and I am trying to get my brain to work here, but I am tired. I'm not going to lie. Hacktivists typically hack for political or social purposes. This goes into a lot of different things. Hacktivists usually is somebody who, like it says, often targets governments or large corporations. Yeah, hacktivists are kind of birthed out of the governmental aspects. They might want to hack a system or hack a political campaign or try to get involved into the political campaign so they can sway it a certain way. But hacktivist to me is someone who's hacking a company strictly based on things they don't like that company doing. It's not exactly like a black hat or a gray hat where, yeah, they have illegal or, financial gain out of it or whatever it might be. But they're really invested into just the motive behind that company and just the way they have an emotional tie to what they're doing. So PayPal, I believe, I can't remember the exact date. I'd have to go back and look. But PayPal had this use case where they weren't allowing contributions for a certain campaign. Like PayPal was saying, we're not going to accept these contributions. We're not going to allow you to make these PayPal purchases. Well, there was a hacktivist group that went in there. I believe it was Anonymous, actually. And by the way, when I say hacktivist, this is just like the definition, but it can be tied to hacker groups like Anonymous or other hacker groups that you might be familiar with. And they went in there and they basically said, well, we're going to hack PayPal because they're not allowing these contributions. through their system. So these people weren't able to basically use PayPal at all if they were trying to contribute to a certain. This is the part I'd have to go back and look, but I believe it was a certain campaign, and again, would have to be more clear on what specifically the campaign was, but they just weren't allowing them to make those contributions. The neat thing about it was a lot of people come in to this particular idea of hacktivists, and they'll say, I tend to agree with what Anonymous did, and a lot of people might come in and say, well, I don't believe you should hack anybody, but it's, keep the rich richer and keep the poor poorer. Well, hacktivists try to get in between that emotional constraint, that emotional tie to that corporation. If they feel that somebody was fired illegally or somebody was, let go or the company did some shady stuff, whatever the case might be, that's usually why a hacktivist gets involved. They're really tied to the emotional aspects of that company. They just want to make sure that they make a point. They're trying to make a point that we can hack you at any time, and you need to play by the rules like everybody else. So a lot of people maybe sometimes champion hacktivists, but then again, it is still hacking at the end of the day, and it's usually illegally. Suicide hackers operate without any means of covering their tracks to prevent their discovery. These are called script kiddies, in my opinion. Script kiddies is somebody goes out in Stack Overflow, or maybe it's a lot of the times the dark web, and they'll get this script that they know is just going to be a nuclear bomb for whatever company or person or whoever. And usually, it's funny they're saying suicide hackers because this definition is a script kiddie. But they're going out and they're just basically trying to cause chaos and run havoc on a particular company or person, whatever it might be. And they're just saying, hey, I'm going to drop this nuclear script on this person or this nuclear code or virus, worm, whatever. And, I want them to suffer. But the problem with the script kiddies is they don't have any delineation. They don't have any type of means of trying to cover their tracks, so they'll go and do that. But I always say, a script kiddie is somebody, or a suicide hacker in this case, is somebody who isn't trying to find a way to fill the gap or to cover the particular means of auditability. Basically, meaning, let's imagine a murder for instance. Imagine someone going and murdering somebody and just leaving all the evidence behind. I mean, that's a suicide hacker, just somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, first time hacking, probably doing it for illegal reasons, or they have some type of spite against the person, and it causes havoc. So that is my quick synopsis of the 6 hackers we talked about. So just to kind of clarify, we have ethical hackers, which you can call white hat hackers, black hat hackers, gray hat hackers, and then you get into a little bit more of a defined definition, which is your nation state hackers, your hacktivists, and then you also have your suicide hackers, which in my opinion are script kiddies. I wanted to start here for my first video because it's important to know what these hackers are, what they're doing. If you ever hear the terminology, hopefully this video will help you to kind of pinpoint specifically what these people are identified as, or these particular hack or threat actors, these hackers, are doing and why they do it. But something I want to leave you with, again, as a recap, is always think about the emotional tie of what that hacker is doing, and you'll kind of get the idea of how to, pinpoint a particular hacker. In this discussion, you can tie it back to what you learned in this video, and it'll give you an idea. But it always starts with the emotion. What is the emotion? Do they have an ethical characteristic? Do they have a legal characteristic? Do they have financial gain contribution, or are they contributing to that particular aspect, which would lead them down the path of a black hat hacker? Also, one quick thing on the hats. I don't know where that came from, if I'm being honest. We just say hat this, hat that, hat that. I think it just makes it more simplified, because if you just say white hat, the color of the hat is really the description of what the emotional ties are into that particular hacking event, or that particular hacking ability, or whatever they're trying to do. But the hats itself, I'm sure, came from something, but it's just something we say. But you'll hear ethical hacking these days. You'll hear black hat hacking. You'll hear A lot of people just use the terminology, but it's the color that you really want to be kind of glued to when you hear any type of color. You have purple. They call it a purple teaming. You have blue teaming. You have red teaming, stuff I'm going to talk about in other videos. But there are colors associated with cybersecurity specifically that kind of gives the atmosphere, the tonality, if you will, to why somebody's doing a certain thing. And these colors will make more sense in later videos that I teach on. So anyway, again, my name's Casey. This is my first video. Hopefully this has helped you, and have a great day.